The second way to help people be more receptive is to learn to communicate in the affirmative. Now, let me tell you what I mean by that. Most leaders, and parents and partners for that matter, are telling people what not to do instead of telling them what to do. Now, the challenge with that is if I tell someone what not to do, it doesn't help them really figure out what to do. Now, if you're a parent, you've probably had this experience where you were in the restaurant with your kids and your child's drink came to the table and you said something like, "Okay, honey, here's your drink. Now don't spill that." What happened next? 8 out of 10 times, they spill it. And what do you say next? "I told you not to do that. Why did you do that?" And they just look at you dumbfounded, like, I don't know. I don't know, Dad. I don't know. Well, here's why they did it is because the brain doesn't understand the modifier don't. When you say don't spill that, the last picture the person is left with before they pick up their drink is themselves spilling it. And then we're surprised when they spill it. The brain doesn't understand the modifier don't. Let me give you another example. Whatever you do right now, whatever you do, don't think about pink elephants and yellow tutus. Stop it. Don't think about pink elephants and yellow tutus. What do you have to do? Your brain automatically makes an image of a pink elephant and a yellow tutu, even though I said don't, even though I told you to stop. This is fundamentally one of the biggest reasons why there's confusion in our environments and a very simple way to clear it up. So instead of saying, "Here's your drink, don't spill that," you can communicate in the affirmative and say, "Here's your drink, please keep that in the cup." It's two very different pictures. You agree? Let's talk about some business applications. Don't be late to the meeting, and then people are late to meeting. The affirmative communication is be on time to the meeting or arrive to the meeting at 9 a.m. Another example is maybe we're going to go to lunch. Maybe we're at the office and we've had a couple of meetings in the morning and we're going to go to lunch. And somebody says, "Oh, hey, Madison, what do you want for lunch?" And I say, I don't know, but I don't want Italian. Does this help you? Does this help you in any way get me what I want? It sure doesn't. If you're in a small, medium, or even large sized city, there's hundreds of other choices besides Italian, but you still don't have any idea what I want. If I say, "Yeah, I think I like to eat Mexican food," that's much more clear and you can help me get what I want. Another issue with telling people what you don't want them to do is there's no action available. If I say I don't want Italian for lunch, you can't take an action. There's no way to take an action until I say, "Oh, I'd like to have Mexican food for lunch." Now you can take an action. You can get on Google. You can think to yourself, what are the 4 Mexican restaurants in the area? And an action is available. This happens with your people too. When you tell them what you don't want, it causes confusion and resistance. They're left trying to figure out what you do want them to do. This is also the reason they don't follow instructions. If we go all the way back to the beginning and answer the question, why don't they do what I tell them to do? Probably because you told them what not to do. Why can't they do what they're supposed to do? Probably because they're thinking about what they don't want to do. The skill is learning to communicate in the affirmative, learning to say what you want people to do versus what you don't want to do. Now, it's a lot easier than it sounds because the brain is wired to think in don'ts. If I ask 100 people what do they want, 90 of them will first tell me what they don't want. It's just how the brain works. But it's very inefficient in business, in sports, in leadership. It's extremely inefficient at best and can be dangerous in some situation, right? Think about a safety situation, right? If we are telling people in a dangerous environment, don't put your hand there, don't put your foot there. If we go back to this idea of attention management, which is what I'm talking about, right? Attention management is the skill of being able to pay attention to your attention. It's also the skill of being able to move people's attention onto what we want it on versus what we don't want it on. Communicating in the affirmative moves people's attention toward what we want them to put their attention on. Telling what people not to do becomes extremely inefficient at best, dangerous at worst. So when you tell people what not to do, it's often very difficult for them to figure out what to do. So they get stuck. We call that procrastination, laziness, inconsistency. We make up stories that they don't care, that they're irresponsible. But the truth is, they're confused and you created the confusion. So, as the leader, you can clear up that confusion by telling them what you want them to do. They're not procrastinating, they're confused and therefore a little or a lot resistant. The best thing you can do for people, an underperformer, to help them achieve more faster is to number one, ask more, tell less. Number two, communicate in the affirmative. And number three, be very mindful of what your people's attention is on, and is it on what serves them? Is it on what serves the business? Is it on what they don't want? Is it on what they're afraid of? Are they trying to get what they want by avoiding what they don't want? If you listen to how people are communicating, you can hear what their attention is on. And as the leader, you can reframe that. You can ask a couple questions and you can put their attention on what they want. I'm going to close with a story. This is a real life story about attention management. A few years ago, I was conducting a training in a small family owned construction subcontractor, and their main job was to put up sheetrock drywall. And they would train the workers, the construction workers, on how to put up the sheetrock. There's this thing called the top tray. Apparently, you don't put screws in the top tray, you do something else. But what they would train the guys to do is they would say, don't put screws in the top tray. And then the guys would put screws in the top tray. So we're in the training and I'm talking about attention management and communicating in affirmative and telling them what you want them to do. And a guy in the back raises his hand and he says, is this why they're constantly putting screws in the top tray when we tell them not to put screws in the top tray? And I said, yeah, I think so. What could you tell them instead? Tell them what you want them to do, not what you don't want them to do. As the leader, if you could improve one thing, if you could just take one thing from this little mini training and implement it immediately, it would be to everywhere, whenever possible, see if you can communicate in the affirmative and then watch and see what happens with the people around you. I hope this has been useful. Hope to see you next time. Thanks for listening.